My wife cheating, moved on, and found new love. Until my ex tried to run over me and my new girlfriend in a jealous rage. I've been a lurker on Reddit for a while, but today I finally have a story to tell. Since my life has been so chaotic, I haven't had time to write about it, let alone breathe, even though I've wanted to post this for months. I can now talk about what occurred to me now that everything has been resolved, and perhaps it will assist someone else avoid a similar circumstance. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old man who married a 35-year-old woman named Carolyn for what I believe to be eternity. In the end, I will never be able to reclaim those 6 years of my life. At least I kept telling myself that our marriage wasn't awful. When we connected on Instagram, I truly believed I had struck gold. She seemed ideal, humorous, and beautiful. My early years were quite chaotic, so I was especially alert for warning signs. My dad was the victim of severe abuse from my mom, who would yell matches at 3 in the morning, throw plates all over the room, and basically take everything because he loved us and didn't want to leave. You can know that when I was dating Carolyn, I was constantly on guard. I spent 2 years scrutinizing every aspect of her life, including how she handled money, stress, and waiters, basically, everything you should look for before committing to someone. To be completely honest, she aced every test. She was compassionate, tolerant, and giving, qualities my mother lacked. I believed I had done my research, thoroughly examined her, and discovered a decent woman. I even recall telling my closest friend that I had finally ended my family's abusive cycle. I was mistaken about that one, man. But I'll talk about that later. We got married in a gorgeous ceremony, purchased a charming suburban home, and began what I hoped would be our happily ever after. I had no idea that I was about to enter a nightmare, albeit a distinct one from the one I had known growing up. About 2 years in, everything started to go south. I mean extremely south. Every month, like clockwork, we had huge blowout fights instead of being the couple everyone envied. It was also constantly over the most ridiculous stuff, like the dishes in the sink, my late work, her hanging out with her friends, or even the TV shows we watched. I really thought we could work things out, so I was working so hard to keep our marriage intact. This was the woman who would surprise me with weekend excursions and leave small messages in my lunchbox. How we had gone from that to her yelling at me because I had purchased the incorrect brand of coffee was beyond me. I recommended couples therapy because I'm the kind of man who thinks things should be fixed rather than thrown away. In fact, I pleaded for it. We attended exactly one session, and holy hell, what a fiasco that proved to be. Carolyn replied, "It's your idea, so it's your expense." So I selected a really competent therapist who specialized in married couples, scheduled all the meetings, and even paid for it out of my own pocket. The therapist began highlighting some communication problems and raising the possibility that Carolyn wasn't managing conflict in a healthy way. She cried uncontrollably, said the therapist was assaulting her, and vowed never to return. I was attempting to make her look crazy, she continued, calling the therapist a quack. I later learned that her father had passed away just before our arguments became increasingly heated. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be understanding, but she refused to talk about it, refused to receive assistance, and continued to get angrier and more aloof. Her yelling battles could wake up the entire neighborhood, but she never got physical or broke anything. On one occasion, our neighbors believed someone was being murdered and phoned the police. Carolyn was shouting at me because I had neglected to get her dry cleaners. We eventually settled into this strange pattern in which we essentially just shared a room and occasionally had sex. We would get up, leave for work, return home, have dinner while watching television, and then retire to bed. Repeat after rinsing. We hardly spoke anymore, which is the only reason the fights decreased in frequency. But I was still foolishly in love with her. That's sad, isn't it? I kept reminiscing about our early years, telling myself that we could return there with enough effort. I firmly believed in the for better or worse part of our marriage vows. I suppose I overlooked the fact that those vows also included forsaking all others. I'll get to that part though. I was brought up to believe that marriage is holy, so perhaps I should have recognized the warning signs. You stick it out and work on it unless someone is being hit or cheated on. It turns out that I was unaware of one of those deal breakers that was about to happen. Allow me to explain how everything went wrong. I work at this dull corporate job, nothing special, just your average mid-level job, pushing papers and going to meetings all day. The kind where you're not important enough to fly first class, but you're important enough to travel. I had been dispatched to a business expo in a different state, where I was expected to spend 4 days networking with potential clients and acting as though I was interested in PowerPoint presentations. My life chose to take a huge turn for the worse at this point. Our firm back home experienced a serious issue 3 days into the expo, something involving servers crashing and losing customer data, the usual corporate emergency fare. Everyone was called back early by my supervisor. I quickly reserved the first trip home because I'm the devoted worker that I am, or perhaps I'm just a fool, you decide. I was thinking of this lovely, dumb concept. Do you remember the romantic reunions in films where the husband surprised his wife? Yes, I did believe that would occur. I planned this surprise during my whole Uber trip from the airport. I stopped at a posh florist and spent $80 on her favorite flowers, which were pricey purple orchids that she always said brought back memories of our first date. I even got her some champagne and some of her favorite high-end chocolates. I believed that this might be a new beginning for us. I thought that this impromptu gesture would remind her of the reasons she fell in love with me in the first place, since we had been acting so distant lately. With my chocolates and flowers, I felt like the greatest husband in the world when I arrived home at 2 p.m. Her car was in the driveway, which made sense because she worked from home on Thursdays, and the house appeared to be typical. However, I recall a few strange things, such as her favorite playlist playing from upstairs, which she only ever listened to when she was feeling particularly upbeat. Though I assumed she had a buddy over for lunch or something, there were 2 wine glasses in the sink. God, I was such a fool. I was so eager to surprise her that I went right upstairs to our bedroom. Although I could hear other sounds and the music was growing louder, my brain was not comprehending what they meant. Do you remember the scene in horror films where everyone yells at the character to keep the door closed? That character was me. My world fell apart when I pulled open the door to my own bedroom and turned the doorknob. That 1 second turned every single pleasant memory, trusting moment, and I love you into ash. I will never be able to forget what I witnessed in that bedroom until the day I die. Beneath some strange guy in our bed was my wife, the person I had loved, supported and built a life with for 6 years. The same bed where I had hugged her after her father passed away, and where we had discussed having children in the future. She was acting as though I didn't exist and that our marriage meant nothing at all, not even attempting to keep quiet about it. As I stood there, a total moron, watching the flowers I had purchased fall to the ground and scurry like cockroaches when the lights are turned on. The man had the audacity to try to scurry past me like I was a doorman, and I will never forget this. I lost it while he was fumbling to put on his clothing and strewing things all over the place. Something inside of me shattered, perhaps because I saw him with my wife or because he believed he could simply walk away from ruining my marriage. My hand was around his throat before I even realized what I was doing. It wasn't a death grip, but it was a clear signal that he wasn't simply leaving. Instead of hitting him as you might think, I gave him 2 open-handed slaps across his face, resembling a dramatic housewife from a soap show. I'm still baffled as to why I didn't just punch him instead. After I caught him with my wife, the man's expression quickly changed from one of fear to one of rage, as if he were truly going to try to fight me in my own home. Can you fathom the sheer disdain and the audacity? He probably fed him stories about being single or separated, so I'm willing to wager he was unaware that Carolyn was married. He most likely believed that I was some sort of insane ex-boyfriend. I released him before the situation worsened, not because I was afraid, but because I immediately saw that this pitiful excuse of a man wasn't worth being charged with assault. It wasn't he who promised me anything. He didn't make a vow to love and care for me till the day we die. He was just another man who was unable to control himself. The true traitor was still in that bedroom, most likely considering how to deceive her way out of this situation. My entire body trembled as I turned back to Carolyn. The lady I had dedicated my entire life to for 6 years was there, fumbling with her bra as if it were a trivial annoyance. The purple orchids I had purchased were all over the floor, most likely crushed beneath the man's running feet. She said the mirror had better lighting, so I hung it up for her last Christmas, and I just stood there watching her get ready in it. She was also taking her sweet time, as if she hadn't just ruined our entire marriage. She was avoiding my gaze in the mirror, straightening her hair nonchalantly, and behaving as though she hadn't just ruined everything we had worked so hard to create. You want to know what this woman had the audacity to say to me after I literally caught her cheating? As if I were a door-to-door salesperson who had disturbed her day, she gave me this irritated look and asked, "Why are you even back?" Nada, I'm sorry, I can explain, or any of that nonsense about fundamental human decency. The fact that I came home early and caught her cheating, in our bed, in the house we bought together, the house where I paid the majority of the mortgage, actually annoyed her. Never in my life have I wanted to strike someone so much. In reality, my hand was twitching as I recalled how satisfying it was to slap her affair partner, but I just stood there, immobilized, while she had the audacity to mutter under her breath, "You weren't supposed to be back," as if I were to blame for her early return home or that I should have called ahead to arrange a convenient time to catch her cheating. This woman's sheer outrageousness, 6 years of marriage, and this is what it meant to her. A small hiccup in her fun-filled afternoon. Do you realize what's truly broken? While all of this was going on, I could see our wedding picture on the nightstand. The same bedside table where she had placed the breakfast I had prepared for her the previous weekend. She had been telling me she was too tired for sex in the same room for the previous 3 months, but she obviously had plenty of energy for this stranger. Like a fool, I stood there thinking about all the late nights at work she had told me about, all the girls' nights out, and all the times she had mentioned going to see her mother. What was the duration of this? How many men had shared my bed with me? Carolyn was by no means finished talking, so I was about to find out. Then this woman, this nasty jerk, went totally crazy. As though I had just blown apart our marriage, she began yelling at me. "You weren't expected to return," she screamed, her face turning red and splotchy, just like when we fought. "You are to blame for this. You wouldn't have seen this if you had simply informed me that you were returning home." This woman would have earned an Olympic gold medal for her mental gymnastics. She even had the audacity to accuse me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. "But hold on, things will improve. You declined my request for an open relationship," she screamed, as if it somehow justified her actions. Yes, 6 months prior, she had asked me once in a drunken chat, and I had declined since I was a monogamist. Apparently, that meant she should do it anyhow, in her deranged thinking. "I have necessities," she continued to rant, as if I were a monster for asking my wife to be obedient. She attempted to cheat on me *nicely*, which is really insane. "I tried to do things without hurting you." How thoughtful of her. Something broke inside of me. 6 years of devotion, trust and love were reduced to "I have needs." Every kiss, "I love you," and moment we spent together were all phony. My palm trembling with anger, I took 3 steps across the room. I lifted my fist and grabbed her by the collar of the shirt I had purchased for her birthday last month. She injured me, and I wanted to hurt her too. Anything that matched the agony ripping through my chest was what I wanted her to feel. However, I couldn't do it after seeing the dread in her eyes, real, authentic fear, despite the fact that she had just shattered everything I held dear and had shown me that our entire marriage was a sham. That's not me. I'm not going to be that man. I vowed never to put that expression on anyone's face, and my mom used to stare at my dad with the same terror. So with my hands still clenched but lowered, I moved back and released a go of her shirt. To let her feel even a small portion of my suffering, the dark side of me still wishes I'd given in to that anger. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserved better than to become what I've always feared. I'm glad I didn't. There I was, standing in my own bedroom, looking at this stranger in my wife's face while surrounded by crushed purple flowers. This was how our 6-year marriage ended, with her accusing me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. Standing there now was the woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning, accusing me of failing to phone ahead to arrange for my discovery of her affair. This woman changed identities faster than a TV station the moment I released her top. She was suddenly no longer afraid. No, in all of this, she was now the victim. "Really? You were going to hit me?" As I turned to leave, she yelled at my back. "This is the precise reason I no longer love you. You're not a man at all." She continued to speak, yelling every possible abuse as she followed me down the corridor. After 6 years of marriage, she was attempting to make me the antagonist in this tale. It was very convenient for her to go from shivering in terror to yelling abuse at the man she had just accused of hitting her. I didn't realize she wanted me to strike her until I spoke with my friend later that evening. "Do you think that's possible?" In order to transform herself from the unfaithful wife into the mistreated husband, she wanted me to lose my cool and give her something she could use against me. She most likely had it all figured out. She would cry about her violent husband, run to the police with a battered face, and take half of my belongings and my monthly alimony payments. I was being lured into domestic violence by the same woman who used to bring me soup when I was ill. In a weird way, the manipulation was almost impressive. I needed to leave that house. It practically smelled of treachery throughout the entire area. In our bedroom, on our linens, and in the air, their colognes and fragrances were blended together. The aroma of another guy had contaminated the same bed where I had comforted her during panic attacks. I took my keys and money and went for a drive. I found myself at my friend Mark's house. I'm grateful for Mark. After glancing at my face, he pulled out the whiskey. Mark understood precisely what I was getting into because he had already been divorced. He said it like it was. I had to get a lawyer as soon as possible. Here's the worst part though. Carolyn was working part-time at a boutique, essentially pretending to have a profession, while I was earning 6 figures. That meant I might have to pay this dishonest woman alimony in my state. Every month the same lady who had just slept with another man might deplete my finances. That's the weird thing about the legal system, even if you are the one who is cheated on, you still have to pay for it. However, Mark, being the astute jerk that he is, pointed out that adultery might alter the alimony figures. Keep a record of everything, he advised. Every email, text message, and receipt. Anything that would show she was cheating on you. In this program, there is finally some good news. Perhaps I won't have to pay for her affair partner's dates after all. My mind was still racing. I had been a contented husband and father organizing a surprise for my wife just that morning. I was now sitting in my friend's living room, searching for divorce attorneys on Google while attempting to keep my stomach from turning up whenever I thought about what I had just entered. I had no intention of attempting to mend our relationship in any way. I could be foolish enough to purchase pricey flowers for a wife who cheats, but I'm not foolish enough to overlook it. My phone started exploding when I was sitting at Mark's apartment, trying to take it all in. Carolyn allegedly made the decision to try to tear me down via text messaging because she couldn't control me in person. And holy, the things this woman sent me are unbelievable. Just last week, this woman texted me "I love you," with adorable little heart emojis. She was now providing me in-depth analyses that contrasted her affair partner's manhood with mine. In fact, she took the effort to explicitly describe in writing how much more effective he was in bed than I was. How I could never please her the way he could. How she had spent years pretending to be with me. Like she was writing a Yelp review for a lousy restaurant, she gave me an entire stinking novel detailing all of my sexual shortcomings, along with performance assessments and size measurements. After I caught her cheating in our own bed, she even had the audacity to tell me that her boyfriend had ruined her for other men, as if I would want her back. The best thing though. She was furious that I had destroyed her good thing. Do you think that's possible? As if I should have given them solitude or something, she was upset with me for interfering with her affair. She accused me of being selfish since I had ruined her chance at true happiness by returning home early without telling her. This woman was performing mental acrobatics that would have pleased Olympic judges. I'm glad Mark was there because he told me right away to take screenshots of everything. He kept shouting, "Document, document, document." And he was absolutely correct. I saw those tiny message bubbles begin to go away, one by one, not even a minute after she had finished her big tirade about her fantastic affair partner and my alleged flaws. I suppose she finally understood that when your husband earns 3 times as much as you do and a divorce is imminent, it might not be the best idea to write down your admission of infidelity. She resorted to using the same old slurs after erasing all the proof of her affair. She called me all the names in the book, but she made sure to keep her afternoon actions out of the conversation. The speed at which she shifted from boasting about her affair to acting as though it never happened was actually rather astounding. It was like witnessing someone attempt to remove evidence from a murder scene as those texts vanished in real time. Unfortunately, she was unaware that I had screenshots of every single item. She may have erased the texts, but she was unable to erase the truth or the images of them that were now securely saved in the camera roll of my phone, ready to prove to a divorce judge why I shouldn't be required to pay this lady any alimony at all. That evening, Mark proved to be a wealth of information regarding divorce. He guided me through every step I needed to take, from gathering proof to protecting my financial accounts, in between shots of whiskey. That night, I hardly slept at all, just mentally reliving everything while I browsed through my phone's evaluations of divorce attorneys. The 2 weeks that followed were a haze of meetings with various lawyers. Some appeared to have barely passed the legal exam, while others sought retainers that were more expensive than my automobile. Finally, I came across Lucas, who didn't need me to sell a kidney to pay him and who seemed to genuinely care about my issue. Lucas really grinned when I showed him the screenshots of Carolyn's texting tantrum, and the photos of the condition of our bedroom. Although he was pragmatic, he acknowledged that we had a strong case to reduce or possibly do away with alimony. He cautioned me that regardless of the reason for the dissolution of the marriage, judges in our state have a tendency to favor the lower-earning spouse. Nevertheless, he pledged to fight for me until the death. To be honest, the first positive development since this horror began was simply having someone knowledgeable and supportive in my corner. Serving Carolyn with divorce papers was the exciting part that followed. Are you curious about what this woman did? For 3 weeks, she avoided the server by altering her schedule, acting as though she wasn't home, and even having her mother inform the server that she had relocated to Florida. She had likely not exercised honestly for months when the server finally caught her leaving a yoga session. She took the entire 30 days permitted by law to reply, even at that point. A move of pure hatred. She was aware that I was paying Lucas by the hour, so she knew precisely what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible. And Carolyn became the queen of petty once the proceedings really got underway. She claimed she couldn't locate bank statements that I knew she had, forgot to bring necessary paperwork to meetings, was late for every appointment and insisted on thorough inventory of every item in the house, down to the last spoon. These absurd settlement offers kept coming in from her lawyer. In addition to wanting my 401k and the house, she also wanted alimony. This woman, whom I found cheating on, asked for half of my retirement funds, which was really outrageous. The most annoying aspect? She was still seeing her affair partner, and we had been apart for months by this time. Yes, mutual friends told me about that. She is trying to make my life as unpleasant as possible while living her best life. She would abruptly alter her mind or make new demands whenever we were on the verge of reaching an agreement. She seemed to take sick joy in seeing me squander money on legal bills. I could almost hear her giggling all the way to her boyfriend's bedroom whenever Lucas had to answer one of her absurd proposals. I attempted to re-enter the dating scene while Carolyn was working tirelessly to prolong the divorce and deplete my finances. I went through a phase of hooking up with random women from dating apps, which isn't my proudest moment. Downloaded Bumble, Tinder and other apps. I tried to persuade myself that this was what it meant to move on by having a few one-night stands. However, each subsequent morning felt worse than the one before. Every pointless hookup served as a reminder to me of why I had declined Carolyn's proposal of an open relationship. That way of life simply wasn't for me. I've always been the kind of guy who wants to have a genuine connection, exchange inside jokes, and wake up next to the same person every morning. I felt empty inside from the whole casual sex situation, as if I were attempting to fill a hole with the wrong form. Other than job, divorce paperwork and failed hookups, I needed something to keep my mind busy. I used to read a lot, like stay up all night to complete a book, until Carolyn came along and life became hectic with 60-hour work weeks and monthly shouting bouts. I therefore chose to go to this small independent bookstore downtown one Saturday rather than browsing through dating apps or monitoring the emails of my lawyer. Cats napping in the windows, creaking wooden floorboards, and that wonderful old book smell, you know the kind. I felt totally disoriented as I stood in the sci-fi area because, obviously, the entire genre had changed while I was occupied with preserving my marriage. I'm referring to these big novels, series that were maybe 15 books long, and titles that I couldn't even pronounce. This woman next to me actually laughed. Not in a nasty way, just this gentle, delighted sound, which must have made me appear very pitiful, just staring at the shelves with this perplexed expression on my face. When I turned to face her, she simply smiled and asked if I needed assistance while holding this enormous book that might have been used as a weapon. I told her that I didn't know where to begin, but I was searching for some decent science fiction. The next thing I knew, she was teaching me the basics of contemporary science fiction while we sat in these comfortable seats in the corner. She was also quite enthusiastic about it. When she talked about her favorite novels, her eyes glowed, and she had the cute habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was thrilled about a series. A brief book recommendation evolved into a 2-hour discussion covering everything from contemporary space operas to classic Asimov. I told her about my old college faves, and she told me about a parallel universe series she enjoyed. For the first time in months I had a meaningful conversation free of attorneys, divorce documents, and awkward Tinder pickup lines. I forgot all about Carolyn and the turmoil for those 2 hours. I was just a man discussing books with a stunning woman who genuinely seemed to be listening. I eventually plucked up the confidence to ask for her number after our spontaneous book club meeting. Something about her made me feel like a youngster again. Even though my hands were shaking as I put it in my phone. Pretty pitiful for a 36-year-old man. With her number, her recommendation for the 3 body problem and the first sincere smile I'd felt in months, I left that bookstore. It struck me how different our text exchange that evening seemed from all those pointless Tinder texts as I continued reading it again. Something genuine was there. I knew I had to disclose my ongoing divorce to her on our first actual date. I had mentally practiced this exchange a dozen times, anticipating her to flee when I brought up my insane soon-to-be ex-wife. However, Emma, yes, that is her name, simply took a drink of her wine and replied, "Thank you for being honest. At least you are addressing your baggage, which we all have." As simple as that. No criticism, strange glances, or awkward attempts to divert the conversation. She also made the joke that she wouldn't have to question whether a man she was dating was secretly married if he was going through a divorce. Emma was just the opposite of Carolyn. Emma would explain things gently during conflicts, while Carolyn would yell. Emma freely gave Carolyn the attention she demanded. She showed genuine interest in my work, recalled little details about topics I had brought up weeks prior, and never once made me feel guilty about going through a divorce. I felt heard and seen for the first time in years. The finest aspect. When we first met, I wasn't even trying to find her. In a bookstore, 2 people connected over science fiction without the use of dating apps or friend hookups. This stuff cannot be made up. After 5 months of dating Emma, I was completely smitten. She made me feel comfortable in every way, including sending me book recommendations while I was at work, leaving little notes in the books she lent me, and paying attention when I shared my day. However, Carolyn continued to put up obstacle after obstacle in the divorce process. She would always come up with a new way to drag things out whenever I thought we were almost done. Missing signatures, contested assets, suddenly remembered joint accounts. You name it, she tried everything. Emma was quite patient during this entire ordeal. She never complained about being with a technically married man or put pressure on me regarding the divorce. She would simply support me during the annoying phone conversations with Lucas and reassure me that this would also pass. I was at last beginning to feel content once more, not content to merely act that way. Naturally, everything went totally haywire at that same moment. I had just spent a wonderful Saturday with Emma. After shopping and eating lunch at this adorable tiny cafe, we were returning to her car in the mall parking lot. We were discussing what movie to watch that evening as the sun was going down. I'm listening to her giggle about something one moment and then everything in my life erupts into pandemonium. This engine screamed like if someone had stepped on the throttle pedal and I heard it before I saw it. As I turned to face the sound, I saw that this car was speeding directly at us, primarily toward Emma. I grabbed her arm out of pure impulse to pull her away, but I wasn't quick enough. Her leg was clipped by the automobile, and I watched in horror as it simply broke. I will never be able to forget the sound of her bone cracking and her scream. I tried to protect her body with mine as I slid down with her when she fell onto the pavement. I was about to dial 911 when I heard the tires squealing once more. The car's engine was still roaring as it backed up after colliding with another car. It dawned on me then that this was no accident. This driver was attempting to strike us once more. Emma's leg was bent at this terrible angle and she was crying in agony. I knew that if I didn't move her, we would both die. With my pulse racing so fiercely I felt it could burst, I grabbed her by the arms and pulled her between two parked cars. Every time she moved, she cried out in agony, but I had to continue. The car slammed into the cars we were hiding between as it charged forward once more. Every auto alarm in the area was activated by the crash's extreme violence. At this moment, people were yelling and racing toward us from all directions with their phones out. The entire parking lot was in disarray, with people shouting, car alarms going off, and Emma sobbing beside me. I swear to God that time stopped as the driver's door opened. Carolyn was there, getting out of the car as if she were going to a dinner party. She appeared just like she had when I last saw her at our lawyer's office, but now she had a crazy expression in her eyes that I had never seen before. With her hair styled flawlessly as usual and wearing the same blazer she used to wear to work, she appeared as though she hadn't just attempted to kill two people in broad daylight. It was made much more horrifying by the stark contrast between her normal appearance and what she had just done. This was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had reportedly been monitoring us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. This wasn't just some drunk driver or random road rage incident. She intentionally targeted Emma, who had never done anything but make me happy again, in her attempt to kill me. Something shattered inside of me when I heard Emma's whimpers of anguish and looked at her fractured leg. She had recently attempted to murder an innocent lady whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. So this was no longer just about Carolyn and me. Fearful that Carolyn might have a weapon or try to complete what she started, I kept one eye on her while holding Emma close to keep her calm. It was like watching someone change into a monster in front of me when Carolyn got out of that car. I hadn't been married to this woman for 6 years. Even the woman I had caught cheating in our bed wasn't this one. This was something very different, a furious being posing as my ex-wife. I was hit hard by the reality of what had just transpired. In fact, Carolyn had made a deliberate, planned attempt to kill us, not in a moment of rage. She must have followed us, waited for the perfect opportunity, and then made a conscious attempt to run us down in the middle of the day. I honestly believed she was going to try to complete what the car hadn't been able to achieve when she began to approach us, her heels clicking on the pavement like some kind of twisted countdown. Except for her eyes, which were blazing with a fierce hatred I had never witnessed, not even during our most heated arguments, her face was utterly blank. Thankfully, she was seized by a man who looked like a linebacker before she could get to us. Like some furious animal straining against a leash, she continued to try to push forward even after that. While I was attempting to calm Emma and examine her wounds, I couldn't take my eyes off Carolyn. This lady had slept next to me for 6 years, sat across from me at innumerable dinners, and discussed starting a family with me. Now she was here, having just attempted to kill my girlfriend and me in a mall parking lot. My head was spinning from the difference between those two versions of her. When someone you once loved enough to marry tries to kill you, how do you handle it? An ambulance arrived after the police, who were siren blaring. Emma was in excruciating pain as they loaded her into it, but she made an effort to grin at me to reassure me that she was all right. While the officers were handcuffing her, Carolyn lost all mental faculties. "It's only been a year, and you're already walking around with that," she screamed at the top of her lungs. Everyone around us recoiled at the sheer vitriol in her voice. In front of dozens of witnesses, she had just tried murder, and in her deranged mind, she somehow was the victim. That's when I realized how completely insane it all was. I genuinely walked in on this woman cheating on me in our bed with a male stranger. She was the one who violated our marriage vows, accused me of being the one who caught her, and, out of spite, prolonged our divorce. She is currently being detained for attempted murder while yelling about betrayal. Olympic-level mental gymnastics were displayed. She was acting as though I was the terrible guy for moving on after she ruined our marriage by infidelity. I felt as though I was in a distorted parallel universe as I stood there in that crowded parking lot, witnessing my ex-wife being crammed into the back of a police car while still yelling profanities and having my girlfriend's blood on my hands from where I attempted to assist her. My wife, who used to make me breakfast on Sundays and send me adorable texts while I was at work, recently attempted to kill 2 people in cold blood. What's the most absurd aspect? She really seemed to think she had a right to do it, as though I was the bad guy in this tale because I caught her cheating. I kept expecting Emma to tell me it was over every time I went to see her in the hospital. Who could blame her after all? His insane soon-to-be ex-wife wants to use her as a hood ornament 5 months after they started dating. Most individuals don't sign up for that kind of baggage. Because she had the misfortune of dating me, she had to endure months of physical treatment and had her leg in this enormous cast. When I informed her who the driver was, I was unable to look her in the eye. Instead, I just gazed at the hospital floor, waiting for the inevitable, "I can't do this anymore" reaction. "Well, at least we know she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison," Emma replied, just reaching for my hand. In fact, she joked about it. This woman was attempting to comfort me while she lay in a hospital bed with pins in her leg due to my ex-wife's attempted murder. She gave me a weird look when I asked her if she was certain she wanted to stay with me after everything. "Do you really believe that I will allow her to win? I'm going to walk again absolutely fine, and she's going to prison. I think I'm going to win this one." The office of the district attorney was obsessed with this case. It turns out that the entire event was captured in stunning high definition by many security cameras. The video was terrifying. Carolyn's automobile was the first to circle the parking lot, resembling a shark searching for food. She then parked and watched us for a bit. This, according to the DA, was important because it demonstrated premeditation. She didn't simply chance to see us and lose it. Instead, she tracked us, waited for the right opportunity, and made a conscious attempt to kill Emma. Before she shot it directly at us, they had video of her passing by our area at least 3 times. The security footage resembled a scene from a horror film. You could see how she waited until we were in the ideal position and then simply floored it as soon as she saw us. The first blow that shattered Emma's leg, Carolyn backing up for another attempt, and me pulling Emma between the cars were all captured on camera. According to the DA, it was one of the most obvious attempted murder cases she had ever seen. There is no place for justifications of heat of passion, or transitory insanity. This was a cold-blooded, well-planned attempted murder that was captured on many cameras from various perspectives. The most bizarre aspect? Before attempting to kill us, she can be seen on the video inspecting her makeup in the rear-view mirror. She is not trying to commit double homicide. Rather, she is merely adjusting her lipstick as if she were going to a business meeting. This, according to the prosecutor, was another nail in her coffin because it demonstrated that she was fully conscious of and in charge of her actions. She wasn't a woman who lost her temper out of jealousy. Rather, she meticulously prepared to kill her ex-husband's new lover and meticulously applied cosmetics for her subsequent mugshot. Because, evidently, plotting to kill your ex's new girlfriend is more important than dividing up the china collection, the entire divorce process was put on hold. For months, I alternated between the courthouse, the hospital where Emma was recovering, and my job. Initially, my supervisor was kind, but I could tell his patience was running thin after I had to leave work for legal reasons 10 times. My ex-wife couldn't tolerate the fact that I moved on after she cheated, so I was living in the courthouse, burning through PTO like crazy, and spending hours with prosecutors. The trial itself was akin to witnessing a master lesson in the art of incarceration. Prosecutors have an ever-increasing mound of evidence. First, there were the security cameras, which showed Carolyn attempting to assassinate Emma from 6 distinct perspectives. The parade of witnesses followed, and it appeared like everyone in the parking lot had stayed to testify. This wasn't an accident, according to the stories of the soccer mom who witnessed the entire incident while carrying groceries, the teenager who captured it all on his phone, and the retired police officer who seized Carolyn before she could complete her task. This was an open-air murder attempt. Even though Emma's leg was still in a cast, she looked amazing on the stand. Without crying, she recounted her experience of seeing the automobile approaching, the agony of her leg breaking, and the fear of knowing Carolyn was returning for another attempt. I also had to testify, telling the jury about the threatening texts, the divorce drama, and how I discovered Carolyn cheating. Carolyn sat there the entire time, wiping tissues at her eyes and attempting to look regretful. The jurors saw through it all. The verdict found it guilty on all counts, including reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. However, things became frustrating when the 12-year sentence was announced. She only has that. She was sentenced to 12 years for premeditated attempted murder, but if she behaved well, she may be released much sooner. Her entire, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly," charade was bought off by the judge. She sobbed as she described how she lost control and deeply regretted her actions. As I sit there, I consider how she looked at her makeup before attempting to murder us. I was given the following explanation by the prosecutors. First-time offender, no past record, expressed regret, etc. But really, 12 years? She made a cold-blooded attempt to kill 2 people. She planned it, tracked us, and if the bystander hadn't stopped her, she would have tried a 3rd time. Emma might have passed away. I might have perished. Additionally, if Carolyn behaves well in prison, she might be released in less than 10 years. You can try to kill someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still receive a shorter sentence than a man caught using drugs, which is only one of the peculiarities of the legal system. What really grabbed me though? Carolyn actually had the audacity to turn to us during the sentencing process and apologize, stating that she wasn't herself that day, as if there were ever a time when it was acceptable to try to kill people in a parking lot. Emma refused to give her the satisfaction of an answer, instead just staring her down the entire time. Even though 12 years wasn't what we had hoped for, it was at least 12 years without having to peer over our shoulder in parking lots. It's funny how a judge's viewpoint on alimony can be significantly altered by a murder attempt. Following the criminal trial, the divorce process abruptly became quite straightforward. Carolyn, who looked amazing in her orange jumpsuit, had to attend via video link from prison. The judge quickly put an end to her lawyer's attempt to fight for part of my assets. It turns out that judges don't feel too sorry for spouses who attempt to kill their former partner's new companions. The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony, the judge actually stated, and I quote this. She received exactly everything she had before the marriage, her personal belongings, her clothing, and her jail commissary account. Her lawyer's expression was priceless as the judge turned down each and every one of their demands. No claim to the house, no alimony, no portion of my 401k, nothing. She ultimately played herself after spending months dragging out the divorce, making absurd requests, and postponing appointments. She may have gotten anything in the divorce if she hadn't tried to make Emma a speed bump. Rather, she received divorce papers that essentially stated, "You get nothing," and a prison cell. However, I was unable to remain in that flat. Too many memories of that guy walking in on her. They were always there when I walked through the bedroom door. Emma and I discovered this fantastic location nearer to the city center. In fact, it's far nicer than my last apartment, has a great view of the city and, most importantly, the bedroom isn't haunted by the ghost of my cheating ex-wife. Emma is now completely recovered. It's hardly noticeable that her leg was ever fractured. She quips that since it permanently got rid of my psychotic ex, getting struck by a car was completely worth it. Dark humor, but whatever gets you through nearly getting killed is better, isn't it? I occasionally question whether I could have prevented all of this. Perhaps when she began picking fights over nothing, I should have recognized the warning signs. When she declined to continue couples therapy, perhaps I should have fled. To be honest though, insanity doesn't always raise a giant red signal. Sometimes it goes unnoticed until it tries to kill your lover in a parking lot. I can say I'm truly happy now, at least. Since we met through science fiction books and are currently living our own wild story with a happy conclusion, Emma and I are discussing getting married next spring. Carolyn will undoubtedly go eventually, but that is the purpose of restraining orders. In addition, Emma's father, who teaches firearms, ensured that we both obtained concealed carry licenses in case Carolyn decided to attempt for a second round after she leaves. Document everything, be on your watch, and maybe stay away from mall parking lots if you're going through a divorce or have strange ex-partners. Additionally, if you're seeing someone new after a divorce, you might want to investigate their background first, or at the very least, make sure they're not the kind of person who would try to kill someone over a split. Reddit, I appreciate you reading my bizarre tale. I'm interested in reading all of your comments, particularly the ones about cars. I guess your ex-wife really drove that relationship into the ground, Is Emma's personal favorite. Oh, and I still go to the bookshop with Emma. No, we no longer park in that shopping center. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more. And don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss an update. Got a similar experience or thoughts on today's topic? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching Faceless Fabulous. Until next time, stay connected.